Hi, I'm Kyle with Razorback Offroad, here today to talk you through the install of our windshield for the Yamaha RMAX machine. We've got everything we need on the table here, all of our parts and pieces, hardware, and tools. We're going to overlay the tools on the screen so you can follow along, write it down, grab what you need. The first step that we're going to take here is to get the scariest part out of the way, which is to take our rests and mark it and drill it on the hood. Okay, and like I said, this is the scariest part of the whole thing because you actually have to drill a hole in your machine, 6 of them. But it's okay, it should be pretty easy to line it up. So this machine's already been drilled because we were doing test fitting, but to walk you through the steps, we're going to take our bracket, set it on the machine. I'm going to hold it down with my thumb, get it lined up with the notches that are already on the vehicle, and then I can mark my holes, remove it, and drill it out. Our hardware is 1/4 inch, so you're going to want to go the next step up in bit size. Gives you a little bit of clearance and leeway when you go to install the hardware. So now that our holes are drilled, I've got my hardware. I've got 3 1/4 inch nuts and bolts. For that, you're going to need a 7/16 wrench and a 3/8 socket, either on an impact like we've got or a box end wrench. Okay, set this in place and start feeding bolts into it. Okay, and then reach around the backside, start all of your nuts. Okay, and we'll do the same exact thing on the opposite side. For the visor, we're going to need the longer 1/4 inch bolts and nuts. Grab the visor. It can be done by yourself, but we would recommend that you have an extra set of hands to do it. Otherwise, tools might start getting thrown. So I'm going to stage my hardware on each side to make life a little easier. And Austin is going to come help me hold this in place while we get bolts and nuts started. Remember, the sticker side is going to go in towards the passengers. So you're going to hold it up into place. And we'll get bolts through the cage, through our visor, and get nuts started. Once you've got all 4 nuts and bolts started, then we'll come back through and tighten them all down. Next step, we'll grab the lower panel and all the hardware we need for that. For the lower panel, we're going to start with these 2 brackets that go on the outside and use existing factory hardware. For that, we're going to need these 2 brackets. Take note before we head over there, they have a notch at one end. They are left and right side specific. When you put them on the machine, you want the notch to be up. So grab our brackets, 17mm wrench, socket, and ratchet, and we'll go put these on the machine. So these brackets use the existing hardware on the cage. We want to use the lower bolt. We're going to bolt it in place here. Again, notch side up in this orientation. So we're going to take that down. Okay, we can leave that bolt in place, just leave it loose. The next little trick is going to be, we're going to take this nut off of the cage, slot it into place on our bracket, hold it in place, and get the bolts started back on the cage. Finger tight as far as you can. And then we'll tighten it down to a relative snug, but you still want to be able to move the bracket. You need to use the open end of the wrench to get back on that nut because the bracket's covering the rest of it. Okay, perfect. Same thing on the other side. Next thing to do is we're also going to utilize these body bolts, one on either side of the console. So you're going to need a 4mm Allen wrench, and then we're also going to need our 7/16 and 3/8 for the 1/4 inch hardware. Now it's time to install the lower panel. So we're going to grab the rest of our 1/4 inch nuts and bolts. We'll stage it like we did before. And we're going to grab our Allen wrench, 7/16, 3/8, and our lower panel. Next step before we put the lower panel in place, we're going to remove these body bolts with a 4mm Allen wrench. There's one on either side of the center console. Take them out, set them aside with the rest of our staged hardware. Now we're ready to set our lower panel in place. It sits right down in this channel. Get it lined up with the brackets we've already installed and get our nuts and bolts started. We're going to get all of our hardware started, but none of it tightened yet. And while I'm still on this side, grab that body bolt, place it through the bracket, and get it started on the inside. Okay, and the last one again, we're going to grab that body bolt, put it in through the bracket on the inside. Just get it started by hand so we don't get cross-threaded. Okay. Then we can grab our Allen wrench, tighten those down, tighten down the 1/4 inch hardware. And then the last thing for us to do is tighten down the cage bolts with our 17mm wrench and socket. Last step is to install the window itself. For that, we're going to need these last stainless 1/4 inch bolts and nuts, number 3 Phillips, 7/16 wrench, and we'll get our stuff staged and throw the windshield on. Hardware is staged. Now we can grab the window, set it into place, slot our bolts into it, and then we're just about done. Now again, you can do this by yourself, but if you still have a friend hanging around like I do, you can get an extra set of hands. It goes a lot smoother. Okay, bring it up in place, align it so that the 3 goes inside the 2. You'll hold it a little bit loose. You might have to wiggle and jiggle it around a little bit. Bolts in from the outside, slot it all the way through. Then you can let it sit against the frame, get your nuts started. So our hardware is started on both sides. We're going to tighten this all the way down and then back it off a 1/4 of a turn so that it doesn't bind. Okay, so that's tight. Take our wrench, back it off a 1/4 turn. That way it doesn't bind when you open and close the windshield. Okay, so now that our hardware is good, we'll check that the windshield folds down and up easily. It doesn't grind, it doesn't squeak. Okay. The last little piece of this, we're going to latch it in the upright position and be all done. You may have to, while the gaskets are fresh, you might have to squish them down just a little bit to get the latches to engage. Okay, we've checked that, nice and tight. Last thing to check, just to make sure everything is good and lined up, we'll fold the windshield down, engage the rubber latches, and make sure it's nice and tight there as well. Fold it down, make sure it sits on our rubber pads. Pull this latch up. Now that we know the windshield's tight in the up and down position, go through one more time, check all your hardware, make sure everything's tight, and that'll do it for the install of the windshield on a Yamaha RMAX. Thanks for watching. See you on the trail.